Dr. Marcus Cole wiped his hands clean and looked at the sleeping patient. The young miner would live. 3 days ago, a tunnel collapse had crushed the man's legs, but Mac had worked for 6 hours straight to save them. Now the bones were healing, nicely inside their metal braces. Mac was tired. He had been working on the medical ship sanctuary for 2 years now. Every day brought new patients from the colony worlds, broken bones, burns from mining equipment, strange fevers from alien plants. Mac treated them all with the same quiet care. The other doctors called him gentle. The nurses said he had magic hands. Mac just thought he was doing his job. The sanctuary was not like other ships. It had no weapons. It carried no soldiers. The whole ship was built to help people. White walls, clean rooms, and the best medical equipment money could buy. Captain Lisa Monroe ran a tight ship, but she was fair. She understood that saving lives was more important than following every rule. Mac walked to the main medical bay where Dr. Amy Foster was checking patient files. Amy was his boss and teacher. She had worked in space for 15 years. Her hair was gray now, but her hands were still steady. She looked up when Mac entered. "How is Collins doing?" she asked. "He will walk again," Mac said. "Maybe not run, but he will walk." Amy smiled. "You did good work." The bones were completely shattered. Mac sat down at his desk. Through the window, he could see stars moving past. They were traveling to Kepler 442b, a mining world at the edge of human space. The planet was rich in rare metals that Earth needed. Thousands of people lived there now, digging deep into the alien soil. "Dr. Cole to the bridge," the ship's speaker announced. Mac looked at Amy, who shrugged. Captains did not usually call. Medics to the bridge unless something was wrong. Mac took the elevator up 3 levels. The bridge was darker than the medical bay, with blue lights and computer screens everywhere. Captain Monroe stood in the center, looking at a large display. She was a small woman, but her voice could fill any room. Commander Jake Sullivan, the security chief, stood beside her. He was a big man with careful eyes. "Mac, we got a distress. Call from Kepler 442b, Captain Monroe said. "Some kind of sickness spreading through the main colony. They need medical help right away." Mac nodded. "How many sick?" "Over 200. Maybe more by now." Mac felt his stomach tighten. 200 was a lot. The sanctuary could handle maybe 50 serious cases at once. What kind of sickness? They do not know. People just started getting sick 3 days ago. Fever, trouble breathing, then they collapse. Some have died. Sullivan stepped forward. "The colony doctors think it might be something in the air. Maybe from the mines." Mac thought about this. New worlds always had surprises. Plants that looked safe, but were not. Gases from deep underground that human lungs could not handle. Sometimes miners brought up more than just metal. "How long until we reach the planet?" Mac asked. 6 hours, Captain Monroe said. "I want you to prepare for mass casualties. Take whatever you need from storage." Mac went back to the medical bay. Amy was already pulling supplies from the emergency cabinets. Other medical staff were setting up extra beds in the cargo holds. Everyone worked quietly but fast. They had done this before. "What do you think it is?" asked Lieutenant Ben Carter. He was a young Marine who helped in the medical bay when needed. "Good hands, steady nerves." "Could be many things," Mac said. "We will know when we see the patients." The hours passed quickly. Mac checked equipment, prepared medicines, and read files about Kepler 442b. The planet was mostly desert with a thin atmosphere. The colonists lived in sealed domes connected by tunnels. If something was in the air, it would spread fast in those closed spaces. When they reached the planet, Mac could see the colony from space. 3 large domes connected by covered walkways. Lights showed where people lived and worked. It looked peaceful from far away. The sanctuary landed at the colony's medical facility. Mac and his team put on protective suits before leaving the ship. The colony's chief doctor met them at the airlock. Dr. Peter Kane looked exhausted. His suit was dirty, and his face was pale behind the clear mask. "Thank God you are here," Kane said. "We have lost 37 people. More are dying every hour." Mac followed Kane through the colony's white corridors. The walls were metal and plastic, built to keep the harsh planet outside. But something had gotten inside anyway. They passed through several sealed doors before reaching the main hospital. The scene inside made Mac stop. Beds filled every available space. People lay on stretchers in the hallways. Most were unconscious. Those who were awake looked scared and weak. The smell of sickness filled the air despite the ventilation systems. "It started in the deep mines," Kane explained as they walked between the beds. "Workers came up complaining of headaches and fever. We thought it was just fatigue. Then they started collapsing." Mac knelt beside a patient. The man was middle-aged with calloused hands, a miner. His breathing was shallow and his skin was hot. Mac checked the man's eyes, throat, and pulse. The symptoms were strange, not like any disease he had studied. "Have you found the source?" Mac asked. "We think so. Mining team found something unusual in Tunnel 7. Some kind of growth on the walls. Looks almost like fungus, but it glows in the dark." Mac stood up slowly. "Alien life. That could explain the strange symptoms. Human bodies were not prepared to fight diseases from other worlds." "I need to see the tunnel," Mac said. Kane shook his head. "Too dangerous. We sealed it off." Mac was about to argue when alarms started ringing throughout the colony. Red lights flashed on the walls. Kane grabbed his radio. "Control! What is happening?" The radio crackled. "Dr. Kane, we have ships approaching. Unknown vessels. They are not responding to our signals." Mac felt something cold in his chest. Ships that did not answer calls were never good news. He looked at Kane, who was staring at his radio with wide eyes. "Dr. Kane," the radio said again, "the ships are huge, and they are not human." Through the hospital windows, Mac could see lights in the sky. Not stars, ships. They moved in perfect formation, like hunters surrounding their prey. As he watched, the lights grew brighter. A dying patient grabbed Mac's arm. The man's grip was surprisingly strong for someone so sick. His eyes were wide with fear and pain. "Doctor," the man whispered, "they did this to us. The shadow ships. They came before. They poisoned us. And now they are coming back to finish the job." The man's hand fell away and he stopped breathing. Mac stared at the dead miner, then at the lights in the sky. Shadow. Ships. The patient's words echoed in his mind as more alarms began to sound throughout the colony. The shadow ships appeared from nowhere like ghosts becoming real. Mac pressed his face to the hospital window and counted at least 12 vessels, each one bigger than the sanctuary. They were dark gray with strange curves that hurt to look at. No human had ever built ships like these. Captain Monroe's voice came through the colony's speakers. "All sanctuary personnel return to ship immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel return to ship now." Mac looked around the crowded hospital. Dozens of sick colonists lay on beds and stretchers. Their faces were pale and their breathing was weak. He could not just leave them. "We have to go," Dr. Kane said, but his voice shook. "Those ships are not here to help." Commander Sullivan's voice joined the captain on the speakers. "Alien vessels are powering weapons. All personnel evacuate now." Mac made his choice. "Amy, take half the team back to the sanctuary. Get the ship ready for casualties. I am staying to help move the patients." Dr. Foster grabbed his arm. "Mac, those ships are hostile. We need to leave." "Not without the patients." Amy looked at the sick people around them. Her face was tight with worry, but she nodded. "Be careful, and hurry." Amy left with 3 nurses and most of the medical equipment. Mac stayed with Lieutenant Carter and 2 others. Dr. Kane helped them start moving patients toward the colony's shuttle bay. The colonists who could walk helped carry those who could not. The first explosion shook the entire colony. Dust fell from the ceiling and the lights flickered. Through the windows, Mac could see bright flashes in space. The sanctuary was shooting back at the alien ships, but her weapons were small. She was a hospital ship, not a warship. "Move faster," Mac called out. They had only moved 20 patients so far. At least 60 more needed help. The second explosion was closer. The colony's outer dome cracked and air started leaking out. Emergency systems kicked in, sealing the breach with foam, but Mac knew they did not have much time. Lieutenant Carter carried an unconscious woman toward the shuttle bay. "Doc, what kind of aliens attack sick people?" Mac did not answer because he did not know, but he remembered the dying miner's words about shadow ships and poison. Maybe the sickness was not an accident. Maybe someone had done this on purpose. More explosions rocked the colony. The alien ships were firing at the sanctuary now, trying to destroy her. Captain Monroe was fighting back, but Mac could see she was outgunned. The medical ship's shields were flickering like a dying light. In the shuttle bay, Mac helped load patients onto the colony's emergency shuttles. Each small ship could carry maybe 15 people, not enough for everyone. "Doctor," one of the colonists said, "the aliens are landing troops outside Dome 2. Mac felt his heart race. Landing troops meant they wanted the colony intact. But why? What did they want with a mining operation and a bunch of sick people? The answer came when the first alien soldiers broke through the colony's main airlock. Mac saw them on the security screens in the shuttle bay. They were tall and thin with gray skin and black eyes. They wore dark armor and carried weapons that glowed with blue energy. When they found colonists, they did not capture them. They simply killed them. "Everyone in the shuttles now," Mac ordered. They could not wait any longer. But as the first shuttle prepared to launch, alien soldiers appeared in the shuttle bay doorway, 3 of them, moving fast and silent. One raised his weapon toward the shuttle full of patients. Mac did not think. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and sprayed it at the alien's face. The creature stumbled backward, clawing at his eyes. Lieutenant Carter tackled another alien while Dr. Kane hit the third one with a medical scanner. The aliens were strong, but they had not expected a fight from sick humans and medical staff. Mac hit his alien with the fire extinguisher again, harder this time. The creature fell and did not get up. "Launch the shuttle!" Mac yelled. The first shuttle lifted off, carrying 15 patients to safety. But more alien soldiers were coming. Mac could hear their footsteps in the corridor outside. Lieutenant Carter picked up one of the alien weapons. It was heavier than it looked and covered in strange symbols. "How does this thing work?" Mac grabbed another alien weapon and examined it quickly. There was a trigger-like device and what looked like a power indicator. His medical training had taught him to figure out unfamiliar equipment fast. "Point it and squeeze here, I think." The weapon fired a bolt of blue energy that melted a hole in the wall. Too powerful for fighting inside the colony, but it worked. More aliens entered the shuttle bay. Mac and Carter took cover behind a fuel tank and fired back. The blue energy bolts made bright flashes and loud noises. One alien fell, then another, but more kept coming. "Second shuttle is ready," Dr. Kane called out. Mac provided covering fire while Kane loaded more patients. The aliens were shooting back now, and their aim was getting better. A blue bolt missed Mac's head by inches and melted part of the wall behind him. The second shuttle launched successfully. 30 patients safe, but at least 40 more were still in the hospital, too sick to move. "We need to go back for the others," Mac said. Carter shook his head. "The colony is lost, Doc. Look." Through the shuttle bay windows, Mac could see alien ships landing all around the colony. Hundreds of soldiers were pouring out, and in space above them, the sanctuary was dying. Her shields had failed and fires burned along her hull. Even as Mac watched, the medical ship began falling toward the planet's surface. "Amy," Mac whispered. He hoped his friend had made it to the escape pods in time. An explosion somewhere in the colony knocked Mac to the ground. When he looked up, alien soldiers were advancing toward their position. At least 20 of them this time. Too many to fight. "The third shuttle," Carter said. "We have to go now." Mac looked toward the hospital one last time. All those patients he could not save. All those people who trusted him to help them. But staying would not help anyone. Dead doctors could not treat patients. They ran for the last shuttle as the aliens opened fire. Blue energy bolts flew around them like angry insects. Mac felt one pass close enough to burn his arm through his protective suit. Carter stumbled, but kept running. They made it to the shuttle just as Dr. Kane started the engines. The small ship lifted off as alien weapons fire hammered the shuttle bay below them. Through the window, Mac watched the colony grow smaller. Fires burned in several domes now. The aliens had won. But as their shuttle climbed toward space, Mac saw something that gave him hope. Other small ships were escaping from different parts of the colony. Miners, technicians, families with children. Not everyone had died, and in the distance, falling like a wounded bird, the sanctuary was trying to reach the planet's surface in one piece. Escape pods dotted the space around her like seeds from a dying flower. Amy and the others might still be alive. The shuttle's radio crackled with voices, survivors calling out positions, asking for help, looking for loved ones. Mac listened to the voices and felt something change inside him. These people were depending on him now. He was no longer just a doctor treating individual patients. He was responsible for keeping everyone alive. As their shuttle flew toward the planet's far side, away from the alien ships, Mac looked at the other survivors. Dr. Kane, Lieutenant Carter, 12 sick colonists, and 5 others who could still fight. 20 people against an alien army. Mac had always been a gentleman who solved problems with medicine and patience. But looking at the terrified faces around him, he realized that gentleness alone would not be enough this time. The aliens had poisoned these people, then come back to kill the survivors. They had attacked a hospital ship and murdered sick patients. 4. The first time in his life, Dr. Marcus Cole felt truly angry. And anger, he was beginning to learn, could be another kind of medicine. The shuttle crashed 3 hours later when its engines finally failed. Mac had kept the ship flying as long as possible, but alien weapons had damaged too many systems. They came down hard in a rocky canyon on the planet's dark side, far from the colony and the alien ships. Mac woke up hanging upside down in his seat. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, but he could move his arms and legs. That was good. Around him, the other survivors were groaning and stirring. The shuttle was tilted at a dangerous angle, wedged between 2 rock walls. "Everyone alive?" Mac called out. Voices answered from around the crashed shuttle. Carter was helping Dr. Kane out of his seat. The lieutenant had a broken arm, but he was awake and alert. Kane seemed unhurt except for bruises. Most of the colonists were conscious too, though several had new injuries from the crash. Mac climbed out through a torn section of the shuttle's hull and looked around. They were in a narrow canyon between tall red rocks. The ground was covered with loose stones and strange purple plants that glowed softly in the darkness. Above them, alien ships moved across the stars like hunting birds. "We need to get away." "From the shuttle," Mac said. "They will find it soon." Carter nodded with his good arm. "There are caves up the canyon. I saw them when we were coming down." Mac helped the injured colonists out of the wreck. 3 had broken bones that he could treat. 1 older man had internal bleeding that worried Mac more. They would need shelter and supplies soon, or people would start dying. They found a cave system about half a mile from the crash site. The caves went deep into the rock, with several chambers connected by narrow passages. Mac set up a basic medical area in the largest chamber using supplies they had grabbed from the shuttle. As he worked on treating injuries, Mac's mind was busy with other problems. Food and water would not last long. The planet's air was thin but breathable, which helped. But the temperature dropped quickly after sunset, and they had no real shelter except the caves. "Doc," Carter said. His broken arm was in a sling now. "I found something you should see." Carter led Mac deeper into the caves. In a back chamber, strange symbols covered the walls. They were carved into the rock and filled with the same glowing substance they had seen on the plants outside. "Looks old," Carter said. "Really old." Mac studied the symbols. They reminded him of something, but he could not place what. Some were circular, others looked like stars or waves, and scattered among them were shapes that looked almost like the alien ships they had seen. "These are not human," Mac said slowly. "But they are not like the aliens who attacked us either." They heard footsteps from the main chamber. Mac and Carter hurried back to find Dr. Kane standing over one of the sick colonists. The man was unconscious and his breathing was getting worse. "His fever is rising again," Kane said. "Whatever made them sick, it is still in their systems." Mac knelt beside the patient and checked his pulse. Too fast. His skin was hot and dry. Without proper medicine, the man would die within hours. And he was not the only one getting worse. Mac sat back on his heels and thought. They had basic medical supplies, but no advanced equipment. No laboratory to analyze blood samples. No computers to research treatments. Just his hands and his knowledge. But maybe that was enough. "Kane, help me move him to a cooler part of the cave. Carter, I need you to collect some of those glowing plants from outside." "The plants?" Carter looked confused. "Are they safe?" "I do not know yet. But the symbols on the walls show similar shapes. Maybe whoever lived here before knew something about the local plant life." Mac spent the next few hours working like he had never worked before. He tested tiny amounts of plant extract on skin samples. He mixed different combinations and observed reactions. His medical training had taught him to be systematic, to follow proper procedures, to never take risks with patient lives. But proper procedures assumed you had a laboratory and time and backup options. Here in the caves, Mac had to trust his instincts and knowledge. He had to become the laboratory. The plant extract showed promise. It seemed to neutralize whatever toxin was making the colonists sick. But the dosage had to be exactly right. Too little, and it would not work. Too much, and it might be poisonous. While Mac worked on medicine, Carter had been exploring the caves. He returned with news that made everyone nervous. "I found another way out," Carter said. "About 2 miles through the back passages, but I also saw lights in the sky. The aliens are searching this area." Mac looked at his patients. The man with internal bleeding was stable for now, but he could not be moved far. 3 others were still very sick from the alien poison. Moving them would be dangerous. "How long do we have?" Mac asked. "Maybe until morning. They are being thorough." Mac made his decision. "We split up. Kane, take the healthy colonists and find a new hiding place. Carter and I will stay with the sick ones until I can treat them." Kane shook his head. "That is suicide, Mac. If they find you here, if we move the sick patients now, they will die anyway. At least this way some of us have a chance." It took 2 hours to convince Kane to leave with the others. Mac understood his reluctance. Leaving people behind went against every medical instinct. But sometimes a doctor had to make impossible choices. After the others left, Mac was alone, with Carter and 4 very sick patients. The cave felt larger and quieter now. Outside, alien ships continued their search pattern across the night sky. Mac finished preparing his makeshift medicine. The plant extract was ready, measured as carefully as he could manage. He started with the sickest patient first, the man with internal bleeding. The improvement was slow but noticeable. Within an hour, the man's fever began to drop. His breathing became easier. Mac felt a surge of hope and treated the next patient. "You did it, Doc," Carter said quietly. "You figured out how to beat their poison." Mac was not sure it was that simple. The plant medicine helped with symptoms, but he did not know if it actually cured the underlying problem. And he still did not understand why the aliens had poisoned the colony in the first place. Dawn was coming when they heard the first alien patrol outside the cave. Mac and Carter moved the patients as far back as possible and waited in the darkness. Blue lights swept across the cave entrance as the aliens searched. Mac held his breath and listened to alien voices speaking in harsh, clicking sounds. They were close enough that he could hear their equipment humming and their footsteps on stone. Then one of the patients coughed. The alien voices stopped. Footsteps approached the cave entrance. Mac saw Carter grip his stolen alien weapon tighter, but there were at least 6 aliens outside, too many to fight. Mac looked at the cave walls around them. The glowing symbols seemed brighter now, as if responding to the approaching danger. And suddenly, Mac understood what they were. Not decorations or religious symbols. They were warnings. The previous inhabitants of this planet had faced the same enemy, the gray-skinned aliens in dark ships, and somehow, they had found ways to fight back. The symbols were a record of their struggle, their discoveries, their weapons. Mac studied the nearest symbol more carefully. It showed the star pattern he had seen before, but now he recognized it as a map of weak points. The aliens might be advanced and powerful, but they were not invincible. The footsteps outside grew fainter. The patrol was moving on, searching. Other parts of the canyon, Mac and Carter waited until full daylight before emerging from their hiding place. "We need to find the others," Mac said, but first, he wanted to copy some of the wall symbols. If the previous inhabitants had left information about fighting these aliens, Mac intended to use it. As they prepared to leave the cave, one of the patients grabbed Mac's wrist. The woman was awake now, her fever finally broken. "Doctor," she whispered. "I remember something. When I was sick, I had dreams. I saw the aliens in their ships. They were afraid of something. Something about humans. What were they afraid of? They kept saying we adapt too fast, that we learn too quickly. They expected us to die from the poison like the others did." Mac helped her sit up. "What others?" "All the other species they killed. Dozens of them. But humans are different. We do not give up. We find ways to survive." Mac looked at the alien symbols on the walls, then at the recovering patients around him. The woman was right. Humans did adapt quickly. They found solutions where others saw only problems. They survived when survival seemed impossible. And now Mac was beginning to understand that his medical training was not just about healing people. It was about understanding systems, finding problems, and creating solutions under pressure, skills that might be very useful in a war. The aliens had made a mistake when they attacked the colony. They had expected humans to die quickly and quietly like other species before them. Instead, they had created an enemy who would study their weaknesses, adapt to their weapons, and find ways to fight back. Mac was still a medic. He still wanted to heal people and save lives. But now he realized that sometimes the best way to heal was to remove the disease. And these aliens were definitely a disease that needed to be cut out. 3 weeks after the attack, Mac had become someone he did not recognize. His hands, which had once only held medical tools, now carried weapons. His mind, trained to save lives, now planned attacks. But the core of who he was had not changed. He was still fighting to protect people. The group of survivors had grown to 37. Word had spread across the planet that someone was fighting back against the alien occupation. Small groups of colonists made their way to Mac's hidden base in the mountain caves, bringing supplies and information. Mac had learned much about their enemy. The aliens called themselves the Vorthak. They had been conquering worlds for thousands of years, always using the same pattern. First, they would poison a planet's population with biological weapons. Then they would arrive to claim the empty world and its resources. But humans were proving to be a problem they had not expected. Lieutenant Carter returned from a scouting mission, with his arm finally healed and his face grim. "They are building something big near the old colony site. Looks like a communications array." Mac studied the rough map Carter had drawn in the dirt. The alien base was heavily defended, but Mac could see weaknesses. His medical training had taught him to look at systems as a whole, to find the critical points that held everything together. "If they are building communications, they plan to call more ships," Mac said. "We have to stop them." Dr. Kane looked up from treating a wounded colonist. "Mac, we have less than 40 people. They have hundreds of soldiers and advanced weapons. Numbers are not everything," Mac replied. He had learned this lesson in the caves. One person with the right knowledge could accomplish more than a dozen without it. "We know this planet better than they do. We know their weaknesses." Mac had spent days studying the symbols from the ancient caves. The previous inhabitants had left detailed information about Vorthak biology and tactics. The aliens were stronger and faster than humans, but they had poor night vision. Their armor was advanced but had gaps at the joints. Most importantly, they did not expect prey to fight back intelligently. That night, Mac led his first real attack. The target was a Vorthak patrol that had been harassing refugee groups. 12 alien soldiers with full weapons and armor, moving through a narrow valley. Mac's plan was simple, but required perfect timing. He had mixed a powerful sedative gas using medical supplies and local plant extracts. Carter and 2 other fighters would trigger a rock slide to block the valley exits. Then Mac would release the gas from above while the aliens were trapped. The attack went perfectly. The Vorthak soldiers were unconscious within minutes, and Mac's people captured all their weapons and equipment without firing a shot. More importantly, they captured 1 alien alive for questioning. Dr. Kane was uncomfortable with interrogating a prisoner, but Mac had moved beyond such concerns. The alien had information they needed, and people were dying while they lacked that information. The Vorthak soldier was terrified when he woke up in the cave. His gray skin had turned pale, and his black eyes darted around looking for escape routes. Mac had learned enough of the alien language from studying their equipment to ask basic questions. "Why poison?" Mac asked in broken Vorthak. The alien did not answer until Mac showed him a vial of the sedative gas. The creature's eyes widened with fear. "Standard procedure," the alien finally said. "Bioweapons kill population. We claim empty world. Always works." Not with humans. The alien's face twisted in what might have been confusion or disgust. "Humans wrong. Adapt too fast. Should die from toxin like others." "What others?" 43 species before. All died properly. Humans are broken. Mac felt a cold satisfaction. The Vorthak had expected an easy conquest, but they had found something they could not understand. Human refusal to die quietly was disrupting thousands of years of successful strategy. Over the following weeks, Mac's attacks became more sophisticated. He used medical knowledge to identify Vorthak biological weaknesses and exploit them. Their respiratory systems were sensitive to certain chemical compounds. Their nervous systems could be disrupted with precisely targeted electromagnetic fields generated from modified medical scanners. More importantly, Mac began to understand Vorthak psychology. They were pack hunters who relied on intimidation and overwhelming force. When prey fought back effectively, they became confused and made mistakes. The turning point came when Mac's forces captured a Vorthak supply convoy. Among the seized materials were detailed files about the alien invasion plan. What Mac read made his blood turn cold. The Vorthak were not just conquering Kepler 442b. They had similar operations running on 17 other human colonies simultaneously. Billions of people were being systematically poisoned and killed across dozens of worlds. But the files also revealed something else. Human resistance on every world was stronger than the Vorthak had expected. On 3 planets, human forces had actually driven the aliens back. The Vorthak High Command was becoming nervous about their human problem. Mac called together all the resistance leaders who had joined his group. Amy Foster had been found alive in the wreckage of the sanctuary and now served as his medical officer. Captain Monroe had survived in an escape pod and brought military knowledge to their operations. They had explosives experts, communication specialists, and even a few professional soldiers who had been visiting the colony. "We are not just fighting for this planet," Mac told the group. "We are fighting for our entire species. If we fail here, the pattern continues on other worlds." Captain Monroe studied the captured files. "Mac, even if we could defeat every Vorthak on this planet, they will just send more ships. Not if we send them a message first." Mac's plan was ambitious, beyond anything they had attempted. The Vorthak communication array was almost complete. Instead of destroying it, Mac wanted to capture it and use it to broadcast information about human resistance to every Vorthak force in the galaxy. "You want to make them afraid of us?" Amy said, understanding Mac's thinking. "Fear is just another kind of medicine. Sometimes it prevents bigger problems." The assault on the alien base required every person in the resistance and all of Mac's accumulated knowledge about Vorthak weaknesses. They attacked at night during a sandstorm that limited alien sensors. Mac's chemical weapons disrupted their coordination while precisely placed explosives took out power systems. The battle was fierce but brief. When it ended, 37 human survivors stood victorious over more than 200 alien soldiers. Mac had become the medic who stood over piles of enemies, but he took no satisfaction in the killing. Each death was a necessary amputation to save the larger body of humanity. Using the captured communication system, Mac broadcast a simple message to every Vorthak ship in the sector. The transmission included detailed information about human capabilities, resistance tactics, and, most importantly, the locations of other human colonies where fierce fighting was ongoing. The message was not a plea for mercy. It was a warning. Humans would not die quietly. They would adapt, learn, and fight back. Every Vorthak invasion would face growing resistance. Every victory would come at a higher cost. Within hours, long-range sensors detected Vorthak ships leaving human space. Not retreating, Mac realized, but regrouping. They would return with new strategies and stronger forces, but that would take time. And time was what humanity needed most. Time to prepare, to share information, to turn Mac's discoveries into standard tactics for human forces across the galaxy. As Mac stood in the captured alien base, surrounded by the weapons and technology of a species that had conquered dozens of worlds, he felt a strange kind of peace. He was still a doctor. He was still a healer. He had simply expanded his definition of what needed healing. Sometimes the patient was a single person. Sometimes it was an entire species. The principles remained the same. Identify the problem, understand the system, and remove what was causing harm. The Vorthak had made humanity sick with their poison and their violence. Mac had found the cure. Now he needed to make sure that cure reached everyone who needed it. The Vorthak fleet returned 6 months later with over 100 ships. They had studied human resistance tactics and adapted their approach. This time they planned to destroy everything from orbit rather than risk ground combat with humans, who fought back. Mac received the warning from long-range sensors just as dawn broke over the mountain base. The massive alien fleet would arrive in less than 3 days. Every man, woman, and child on Kepler 442b would be dead within hours of their arrival. But Mac was no longer the gentle medic who had treated miners and colonists. 6 months of war had changed him into something the Vorthak had never encountered. A human who understood their weaknesses better than they understood his strengths. "How many ships?" Captain Monroe asked as the resistance leaders gathered in the command center. "Enough to turn the entire planet into glass," Mac replied, studying the sensor data. "They are not taking chances this time." Amy Foster looked up from her medical reports. Over the past months, she had helped Mac develop antidotes to 17 different Vorthak biological weapons. What about evacuation? We have captured ships now. Not enough to save everyone. And where would we go? They are hunting humans on every world. Mac walked to the large map that covered one wall of the command center. Red markers showed Vorthak positions across the planet. Blue markers showed human settlements and resistance bases. In 6 months of fighting, the humans had managed to save nearly 10,000 colonists and drive the Vorthak back to a few heavily fortified positions. But none of that would matter when the orbital bombardment began. Lieutenant Carter entered with a squad of fighters, all carrying captured Vorthak weapons. His broken arm had healed stronger than before, and his eyes held the hardness of someone who had learned to kill efficiently. Mac, we found something in the deep caves, something the ancient people left behind. Carter led Mac and the other leaders through winding tunnels to a chamber they had never explored. The walls were covered with the same glowing symbols they had seen before, but these were different, more complex, more urgent. At the center of the chamber stood a device that looked like a cross between an altar and a computer. Its surface was covered with controls that pulsed with soft light, and symbols that Mac now recognized as star maps and weapon specifications. The previous inhabitants faced the same situation we do, Mac said, studying the ancient machine. Orbital bombardment, complete destruction. Amy ran her scanner over the device. The power readings are incredible. This thing is still active, after thousands of years. Mac spent hours studying the symbols and controls. Slowly, their purpose became clear. The device was a planetary defense system, but not like anything humans had ever built. Instead of stopping enemy ships with missiles or energy weapons, it did something far more elegant. It turned the planet's entire magnetic field into a weapon. Is it possible? Captain Monroe asked when Mac explained his discovery. The mathematics work, Mac replied. A focused magnetic pulse of this magnitude would disable every electronic system within several light hours. Ships, weapons, life support, everything. Including our own equipment? Yes, but we can prepare for that. The Vorthak cannot. Mac's plan was desperate but brilliant. The ancient defense system could generate a magnetic pulse powerful enough to cripple the entire Vorthak fleet. But activating it would require someone to stay behind and operate the controls manually, and the radiation from the process would be lethal. I will do it, Mac said simply. The others protested, but Mac's logic was unassailable. He understood the ancient system better than anyone else. He had the medical knowledge to survive the radiation long enough to complete the activation sequence. Most importantly, he had already accepted that some patients could only be saved by sacrificing the doctor. The next 2 days were spent in frantic preparation. Every human on the planet was moved to shielded locations deep underground, all electronic. Equipment was wrapped in protective materials or buried in Faraday cages. Mac worked 18 hours a day, studying the ancient controls and preparing backup systems in case the first attempt failed. On the final night, Amy found Mac alone in the chamber with the defense system. He was sitting quietly, his hands resting on the glowing controls. "You do not have to do this alone," she said. "I could stay and help." Mac smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him in months. "You know that is not true. The radiation levels will kill anyone in this chamber within minutes of activation. 1 person can complete the sequence. 2 people would just mean 2 deaths. Mac, you are not just a medic anymore. You are a leader. These people need you." "No, Amy. These people need to survive, and sometimes survival requires difficult medicine." Amy sat beside him in the glowing chamber. "Do you regret it? Everything that has happened?" Mac thought about the question. 6 months ago, he had been a quiet doctor whose greatest concern was setting broken bones and treating minor illnesses. Now he was planning to sacrifice his life to save an entire species. "I regret that it was necessary," he said finally. "But I do not regret my choices. This is still medicine, Amy, just on a larger scale. When the Vorthak fleet arrived, Mac was ready. The alien ships spread across the sky like a plague, their dark hulls blotting out the stars. Communication attempts confirmed what Mac already knew. There would be no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. The bombardment began at noon. The first energy beams struck the planet's surface with the force of nuclear weapons. Mountains were vaporized, oceans boiled. The atmosphere caught fire in some places as the Vorthak systematically destroyed everything that might support human life. But deep underground, Mac was calm. He watched the ancient controls respond to his touch as systems that had waited millennia for this moment came online. The planet's magnetic field began to shift and focus, guided by technology that was old when human ancestors were learning to use fire. Through the chamber's communication system, Mac could hear reports from the surface. The bombardment was accelerating. The Vorthak wanted to finish their work quickly and move on to the next human world. They would not get that chance. Mac began the final activation sequence as the chamber filled with deadly radiation. His medical training told him exactly what was happening to his body as the energy levels climbed. Cell damage, organ failure, neurological breakdown. He had perhaps 10 minutes before his hands would be too unsteady to work the controls. It was enough. The magnetic pulse erupted from the planet's core like an invisible explosion. It raced outward at the speed of light, washing over the Vorthak fleet in seconds. Every ship, every weapon, every life support system failed simultaneously. In the silence that followed, Mac could hear the alien vessels falling from the sky like metal rain. Their crews were still alive, but their ships were dead. They would survive long enough to send a message to their home worlds. Humans were not prey to be easily consumed. Mac's hands fell from the controls as his strength finally failed. The ancient device powered down, its purpose fulfilled after thousands of years of waiting. Through fading vision, Mac could see the symbols on the walls growing dim. He thought about the patients he had saved over the years. The miners with broken bones, the colonists with fever, the resistance fighters with combat wounds. In the end, he had treated his largest patient, an entire species threatened with extinction. The last thing Mac heard was Carter's voice over the communication system, reporting that the human survivors were emerging from their shelters. The planet was damaged but not destroyed. The people were alive. Dr. Marcus Cole, the gentle medic who became a warrior, had performed his final surgery. The infection called the Vorthak had been cut out, and humanity would survive to heal. Years later, when human children learned about the war against the Vorthak, they would ask their teachers a simple question. How did a peaceful doctor defeat an empire that had conquered the galaxy? The answer was always the same. He remembered that healing sometimes requires removing what causes harm, and Dr. Cole was very, very good at his job. In the deep caves where Mac had made his sacrifice, the ancient symbols still glowed faintly. They told the story of another species that had faced extinction and chose to fight back. Now they told the story of humanity as well. The medic had stood over his pile of enemies one final time, but in doing so, he had ensured that others would never have to. His hands, which had learned to heal and then to harm, had finally found the perfect balance between the two. The Vorthak Empire would never again underestimate the species that refused to die quietly. And somewhere in the deep chambers of a wounded planet, the memory of a doctor's sacrifice continued to glow in the darkness, a reminder that even the gentlest souls could become fierce when protecting those they had sworn to heal.